How's it going, everybody? My name is Lee Woodmansey, and I'm the campus minister here at the Baptist Collegiate Ministry at the University of Arkansas at Fort Smith. Right now, you're catching us in the middle of episode 30 of our podcast called The Link. And I want to give you a little bit of information about what The Link is. The Link tries to do three things. We want to connect students to topics of theology and the practical outworking of that theology. We want to connect students to churches and staff of those churches in our area. And we also want to connect students with university staff, personnel, faculty that are Christians here at UA Fort Smith. And so today we're going to be joined by somebody who's going to fit into that second category. But if you've watched the previous episodes or listened to the last two, we're not talking just with SBC churches. We're talking with other folks who are doing college ministry in the area. So right now I am going to be joined by somebody who has sustained more head trauma than any other campus minister in this last year. And that is none other than Cade Richards. Cade, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, man. I'm actually pretty stoked to be on this.
Yeah, how's the brain and how's the shoulder?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, just a little light concussion from the last mountain bike wreck, so shoulder's doing better. So
like I totally get that there are degrees of being concussed. Mm-hmm. But would you ever say that there is a recommended amount of concussedness that you could sustain?
I think Will Smith put out a movie on, being concussed.
right. What was the name of that movie?
I think it was Concussion.
Oh, right. Yeah. Because it was the doctor for the NFL that was doing the brain studies. Oh, man.
Yeah, I'd say I'm about 80% full. So
okay, so you've got some left to give.
Yeah.
What about the shoulder,
man.
though?
I made a red shirt this year, and then they may put me on the field next year.
What was concussion protocol for you?
Man, they just I've had concussions from high school sports.
Not my first rodeo.
Yeah, it really isn't. Like literally. Okay, so one of them actually, when I was in college, it was just group of dudes get together on a retreat, and it's like, you gonna play two-hand touch. Like, no, man, we're gonna play tackle. So
am I a man?
Exactly. So, sophomore in college, I get tackled to the ground. We're playing in some field in the Ozarks, and so I hit my head on a rock, and I didn't know anything about anything, and so I went home and I was like, best thing to do is sleep this off. I slept for 8 hours in the middle of the day, and I'm like, well, I could have gone into a coma. So yeah, they basically just tell you don't go to sleep, hopefully, see if there's any residual effects, but it's nothing too
But
crazy.
You're good to go.
Yeah.
While we're telling stories about poor choices in college, when I was in Iraq, I had to go to the doc because my wrist had just started hurting out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And long story short, had injured my triangular ligament, but they did a x-ray, and the doctor came and showed me the x-ray and was like, hey, the good news is that break you had in your wrist healed. And I'm like, dog, you got the wrong guy. I've never broken my wrist. He's like, nope. Clear as day. And what had happened was in college, I was playing Ultimate Frisbee and had tweaked my wrist.
Good times,
so I
baby.
thought, and flat out, he said, no, that was a legit break.
Classic.
So, hey, good old classic ignorant college guy.
That's exactly
moves.
right, man.
Rock on. Well, obviously, you went to college.
I did.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, married, kiddos, that kind of jazz. What you got for us?
Yeah, man. So I always start off by saying I'm a Louisiana boy, which is somewhat true. And so my childhood was in Louisiana, and that's where I grew up. But to be totally honest, I love all the food, love the culture from Louisiana. But we moved whenever I was I think I was 10 or 11, somewhere in there, and moved to a little town in South Arkansas, and that's where I bounced around a few towns down there. Prescott and Nashville. What's up, everybody? And so
all five of you that exist there.
Y'all listening? Okay. So anyways, graduated from Nashville, Arkansas, kind of typical South Arkansas dude. There's we were talking about this yesterday. There's just nothing to do down there except for hunt and play sports.
And get in trouble.
And get in trouble. That's exactly right. And I did all of those things, all three of those things. And so, man, I am hesitant to say this, but I guess I should. Really my life started and all of my journey started at Arkansas Tech. So I went to Arkansas Tech and did the classic freshman stuff, and then got involved with the campus ministry, and it turned my life around. And that's why I'm sitting here today with you, honestly. I'm passionate about this because I was just a mess, really, when I got to college. And that's where I met my wife, Rachel. She's actually also a Louisiana girl. She grew up in New Orleans. I grew up in Shreveport, so I'm a Yankee to her.
Shreveport is technically...
It's South Arkansas.
Technically, it's Louisiana, but it's one of those cities that, Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana, all
Yep.
three do their best to act like no
Exactly.
one actually knows anyone from there.
Exactly.
Right, so
But
that's
it's all
straightforward.
the same thing, man. It's, you get below, like, here really, and it's just, mud until you get to the coast. I mean, that's all there is. And so, at least there's crawfish in Shreveport. So, anyways, yeah, man, got to Tech and like just loved it. There was a vibrant campus ministry there, and man, that is where I have some of my best friends to this day. That's where I found my purpose really in life, and so that kind of launched me on this journey into ministry when I had really no plans at all into going to full-time ministry. I thought ministers were boring. I was like, that sounds like a terrible job.
It does sound terrible.
It does.
From the outside looking in.
It does. And but man, once I kind of found out what a campus minister was, and to me, like, I always use this analogy. It's like a Swiss Army knife. You got to be good at event planning, speaking, talking to people, one-on-one conversations, organization, all that stuff, man. And so that's really how I got to where I am today. But no kids yet, just me and Rachel. We got two fur babies, Copper and Cayman, two beagles that our neighbors just love.
I bet.
Love them, man. We're the talk of the neighborhood. And so, yeah, man, that's pretty much it. Other than that, I enjoy getting concussed through action sports. And so
on a frequent basis. If you want to know more about Cade's story, I'm actually going to link up in the cards whenever he was preaching here this last semester when we were doing our pneumatology series. So he goes a little bit more in depth there. But yeah, so how long have y'all been married? Remind me?
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah, which is awesome, man. And we said we wanted kids after 5 years, but we're 5 years in. It's like maybe 5 years. So we'll see.
Yeah, whatever happens from there, I mean, I'm sure those dogs kind of keep you going.
Oh, geez, yeah.
I've seen you walking around on campus with them.
Yeah.
And they are magnetic, to say the least.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the best way to describe them in a flattering light. But yeah, so no kiddos yet.
No.
See where the Lord leads from there.
Yep, absolutely, man.
Rock on. All right, so let's move into a little bit more of the topic of this conversation.
Yeah.
What is your actual title at your church? Because, yes, you run a college ministry, but it's not just like a college ministry like we have here at the BCM, where it's outside of a church-based. Yours is actually church-based. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, man. So I am technically just campus minister on my job title. I'm campus minister of the Lions for Christ. So the church that I work out of is West Ark Church of Christ. It's right down the road from here, right across the street from campus. And so they brought Rachel and I on because and they want to reach college students. They want to be a college church, and so.
And you've always had college students just because of proximity.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But they've had the ministry around for a number of years. I would say like 15 years, but it just had gone through this major ebb, I guess, kind of a downward trend on hey, we're right here, but we're not reaching college students. And so I'm campus minister, and then we also have a year after. So I've been there. And this is my 5th year, which is crazy. And so after I was hired on staff, some of our friends from the campus ministry at Tech, which was a huge part of our story, they came on staff as well.
And what was the name of that ministry at Tech? Just to give them some shine.
It's Church of Christ Student Center, the CCSC. And so, like, I always called it the CCSC element of P. It's like too many letters, man. It's a Church of Christ campus ministry there. And they've actually changed their name since then to Renew College Ministry. And so, yeah, man, it was for us, Church of Christ peeps or whatever. It was kind of like a Jerusalem church, honestly. Like, it was very much a sending ministry, and that's kind of the DNA that I inherited going through there. And I just can't say enough good about them and what they've done for me and Rachel personally. So
yeah. So between being at Tech and being here, you were also in Nashville, right?
Yeah.
What was that experience like? Because I don't think many students have this experience with church in that regard. Where'd y'all go to church?
So we went to do a program with a church called Ethos Church. And Ethos Church is a very successful church at reaching young people. I mean, this is kind of the trendy thing that always gets mentioned, but it's so much more than that. I mean, they meet in a bar downtown, and then they multiplied and have several venues that they meet at on a weekly basis. And that's kind of, you talk about the aesthetic of it, the feel of it, but man, the people there, they love God, and they're passionate about reaching reaching their friends, passionate about reaching the city. And so we went for a year in Nashville. So we got married, we went on our cruise, and then the day we got back from the cruise, we loaded up all our stuff and went to Nashville, and we did this church planting apprenticeship for a year. And man, it was awesome because I got all these amazing tools and skills that I learned from the CCSC at Arkansas Tech, but then I went and did this apprenticeship program at Ethos, and it put a whole new set of tools and things like that in my belt. And man, I could not say enough about them as well. And both of those places, I think, and I could talk more about this later, but man, what gets me excited is like Ethos and the Church of Christ Student Center at Arkansas Tech, man, they really, like, the goal is not just to have a great church, just to have a great ministry. It's to be a ministry that plants ministries. And so, man, that stuff gets me fired up. There's a dream, there's a vision, there's a goal. And that's kind of the reason I got sucked into all this. It was not just, hey, let's have a good little event here, but it's something bigger. And so
there's more intentionality behind it.
Yeah, exactly.
And part of the reason I wanted you to tell that is because in the last episode, which I'll link up here as well, Blake Pasetsky was talking about whenever he was doing his undergrad, he took a lot of classes in church planting and how that actually really helped and carried over for him in college ministry, especially starting a college ministry over here at Central Christian, because they went from not having one to having one. A lot of those skills kind of carried over, and you're kind of saying a lot of the same things as well.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, when we got here, I mean, man, it was a dream and a curse. It was like when we got here, there were actually 2 students involved with the ministry at the Alliance for Christ, and so really, I'll just say it how I really say it. Like I was like, doing church planning without any of the sexiness. It was like, I had to build this ministry from the ground up, and man, that's the situation we were in when I got here 5 years ago. And so you had to get out and people gather and meet and make a splash on campus, much the same way a church planter would have to do in a neighborhood or a city. You just got to get your name out there. And so
And so with that being said, how long have you actually worked with college students? So I mean, I know that being a college student at Tech, and that's whenever your life really got turned around. But how long have you worked with college students? This is your 5th year at LFC, but in total, what would that be?
So if we got 5 years here, you go back, I did 1 year, and I led a house church with college students from Vanderbilt, Belmont, and another college there in Nashville. So I was working with college students there, and then also before that at the Church of Christ Student Center at Russellville, I did an apprenticeship program, which was a little more intensive 2-year program, and it's to basically practically train someone to go out and plant a new ministry or take over an existing job, but really with an eye towards planting a new ministry. Absolutely. And so I guess you could say 8 years now. Obviously, I had some practice and some things I had to do as an intern at that ministry, but I would say really full-time working with college students would be about 8 years now, which is crazy to think about.
I mean, whenever you start to put some years under you in this position, it starts to rack up really quick. So that process from becoming someone who was really devoted to Christ as a college student to just like naturally led into serving other college students and with an eye towards doing that from there, what other kind of formal education you have? Because I mean, there's a lot of these apprenticeships, and frankly, some of that's probably more valuable than a degree you may hold. But what about your education in general besides Tech?
Yeah, man. So I actually have an undergrad in psychology and sociology, which sounds really cool, but I had to take 4 extra classes in sociology to get that double major. And then I realized about, I'd say 75% of my way through my college, undergrad, that I didn't want to sit in a room and people talk to me about their problems all day, every day. And so
how's that working out for you now?
That's what I'm doing all day, every day. So, man, I really, I come from a family of, they're all self-employed, and so that has always really appealed to me. And so, they set their own schedule. There's pros and cons. You set your own schedule, but if you're not working, stuff's not getting done, sort of thing. But I always,
double-edged sword.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I really, I've always liked that, just kind of that freedom to, be your own boss and that sort of thing. And so I started looking into maybe starting my own business in my senior year. And that's when God was doing some cool stuff with, just as an intern, they had asked me to start considering the apprenticeship. And God just took me down this road. It was so clear to do this apprenticeship at that campus ministry. But beyond that, so I did finish those degrees. And then, I mean, I grew up going to church, but like honestly, whenever I got to college, I didn't know that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all were essentially the same thing. I didn't know they were gospels. I really didn't have any strong biblical background, I guess. And so that's something that I was developing a passion for. And a part of this program was to go to grad school. There was a distance program through Harding School of Theology, which is in Memphis, Tennessee. It's seminary. And so with that, I've been getting my master's in Christian ministry. And let me just say this, dude, I did not care about high school graduation. I did not care about college graduation. Didn't want to walk, didn't care, but I'm going to be dancing across that stage. I got 2 classes left in my master's in Christian ministry. So I think this summer I'm taking my last class and I'm going to be stoked.
You're going to be breakdancing across it.
Yeah, I'm going to be spinning on the head. It's going to be awesome.
Are y'all actually going to be able to do an actual
So
graduation and not virtual?
I don't know. I'll be
Would
finished.
you defer until May if that's something that would...
I have to defer. That's what I was going to say. Like,
Well,
so
hey, it could buy some extra time
exactly, dude. I'm hoping 20. What would that be? That'd be 2022. Whatever it is, man. I'm throwing myself a party. I don't care. So I have. I will have a master's in Christian ministry, and then those apprenticeships. Like, if I can be totally honest, I have loved the format that I've gotten my education, and I'm definitely my growth as a minister and as a person has always been, that saying, like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so for me to slow down this degree and to practice, I'm getting theological training, but then also practical training at the same time, like marrying those two instead of just doing all my theology in one go. That has been invaluable for me, man. And it's just been so good. And so, yeah, man, I have those classes left and I'll be done. But for me, it was just so good to get that practical 2 years while learning, some basic, Bible training, really. And then after that, I did the program.
Yeah, well, and part of the reason I wanted to focus on this a little bit longer than we would with somebody else is because I think it's important for students to hear that you don't have to go to seminary in order to do ministry, right? If you are involved heavily at your church, or if you're working through some kind of program that is training you in addition to what other assets are already there at your church or your ministry, like in many ways, that is what really prepares you more times than not. Now, is there more rounded out forms of education that you could pursue? Of course, there's always going to be that. And there's always advanced degrees you can go get.
Yes.
But was that absolutely necessary for you to start doing ministry? Absolutely not. Yeah. Absolutely not. And I feel like that's just important for students to hear because we push this heavy academia on them and say, this is the way the world works. And if we're being honest, that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
And if that's true, then let's just be honest about that.
Yeah.
Rock on.
Yeah.
All right. So, absolutely. Hey, let's talk about your ministry right now. Okay. So someone who comes to a normal gathering that you have outside of COVID, because I know things are a little bit silly now because of COVID, we can talk about those differences now. But what's something that somebody could pick up on the first time they show up? If they're a first-time visitor, what are they going to walk away hanging out with LFC folks right away? What's their impression? What's your teaching style like?
Yeah.
Tell us about your ministry.
Yeah, man. So thought about this, and so for us, as Church of Christ people, we've always been known for, a cappella worship, which, I may mention some of this later, but, we've come more towards rejoined our evangelical brothers and sisters in a lot of ways. And so that being said, a little, teaser for maybe later. For us, man, I hope that people don't know us by our musical choices. I hope that people don't know us from anything else other than our love for one another. That's a good, idyllic answer. But I think if you were to come into our ministry, the reality would be, and this is by design, I hope that you would see, man, this is not that big of a production. I know that's weird to say, but something that was really instilled in me during that program and at Ethos in Nashville was everything needs to be simple, relational, and repeatable. And so, you're on a continuum. There's always this tension between high quality and then reproducibility, basically. You get more towards one, you're getting further away from the other. And so for us, that is a really, I guess I should say for me personally, as the leader, the point guy of the Lines for Christ, that's a huge principle that I like to live by. And so you're going to come into our building and you're going to see a dude dressed much like I'm dressed now. with a nice,
with a bolo tie on or something.
No, man, I'm probably gonna be wearing t-shirt and jeans, and that's not to be a hipster Christian. It's just I want someone to see what I do, and I hope that they come away with a sense of awe for God, a sense of, man, this ministry, they are all in for Jesus. They are devoting their life to Jesus, but at the same time, I want them to say, like, I think I could do that. This is not, we're not, shooting off pyrotechnics in the background, but it's just like very relational, very simple gathering, and I think that's something that we have made a priority and we've stuck to quite a bit, and so I hope I'm guessing that that's what people feel, but that's kind of our aim for what people should feel and think when they come into our ministry. And so, a typical night we'll worship, and we actually do this because of some of our traditional background. Mm-hmm. What we do actually for worship is a part of that, priority. And so we just put on YouTube videos of, worship songs. And so if you can do this on a Wednesday night with us, why couldn't you do this with a small group of people in your home?
And that's repeatable.
Yeah, exactly. It's that principle. And so we'll do some worship. There'll be scripture read. There'll be prayers had. And then I'll get up and teach. And man, if I'm being totally honest, we've done several different series. I'm still, I'm almost 30. I'm
Old Testament right now.
Yeah, exactly. But my favorite thing to do is, rather than do topical, is, man, if I'm in my sweet spot, if I do exactly what I want to do, we're just going to teach straight from a book of the Bible. And I think that's something that has really worked its way into our culture at the Lines for Christ. People love, like, our number one thing that people request that we do again is the book of Romans. I mean, and it's just like bare bones basic stuff. I mean, we're going line by line, verse by verse in Romans all year long. And I think just instilling in people a love for studying the Word of God. And
even if it's hard.
Exactly, and especially if it's hard, because this is something me and Dylan, which is he's not on staff, but he is on staff. So there's two couples that work in our ministry, me and Rachel, and then Sarah, she's on staff. She's also a campus minister, and her husband. We all went through Arkansas Tech, and Dylan and I get together and develop teaching series a lot and stuff. And man, it's just so easy nowadays for people to just scroll through their phones. I'm not that guy that's just going to bash on technology on this podcast, but we scroll so quickly that we just look for information that's relevant for us. And so we're trying to retrain our people to dive in, study line by line, slow it down, and say, like, all of this is relevant to us. And so, but we're going to have to mine the depths of this a little bit. So,
gotcha.
Anyways.
Well, I want to follow up with one thing in particular, wearing T-shirts and that kind of jazz to be relatable. That, you're not doing that to be the hipster. The tattoos do that for you, right?
Exactly.
That's what the tattoos are for.
Yeah, just reveal, I got a past here, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Just so you know. And then the other thing is, like, I think even just the way that y'all have just arranged your space with the college house, that's right there next to the church. I mean, like, it's meant to be a pretty low barrier. Like, you show up.
Yep.
A barrier crossed, like, that's it. Like, that's the only thing you'll have. And I think that's really something that demonstrates that intentionality. And not that y'all are, like, trying to find the path of least resistance. That's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to find the path that leads people to being able to find you the easiest and assimilate. Because it's not about joining the club, it's about encountering Jesus.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Hey,
man.
rock on. It's almost like I kind of know a little bit about what y'all got going on.
Offer you position on staff.
So whenever it comes to your teaching style, and I know you've mentioned that y'all basically will exegetically work through line by line, was it always that way, or was that like a transition for you in the way that you had been taught in your church upbringing, or what was that transition like, or that progress like?
Yeah, I don't want to be too harsh on my upbringing, but I think, because I was, 18 or less, and so no telling what was going on during my brain during church or a sermon, but I just remember coming away from a lot of sermons and thinking that was good information, but not really sure what to do with it.
Yeah.
And so whenever I was a college student and I did study Romans for the first time, we went through a series at the campus ministry I was a part of. I remember being, like, angry that why didn't no one sit down and explain this to me? I mean, it was just the gospel. And so we've pretty much tried to take that, because I think all four of us that work in the campus ministry, we all felt that during college. Like, first and foremost, people just need to encounter the Word of God. We need to dive in, and we need to just see what the Bible has to say about faith and really the gospel. And man, there's such a misunderstanding of the gospel, and I could take us down a rabbit trail, but there's just such a watered down version of what it means to follow Jesus and what it means to be in God's family. And we really do feel a great burden, and I know that you guys do too, and the other campus ministries here feel that same burden. But we just want to share that good news with people because it's life-changing. It did that for the four of us, and so we've thought about curriculum so much, man, and we're trying to just hone that in, and with our teaching, it's like, here's what God says, and we want to reshape worldviews. I mean, that's what it did for us. I mean, it completely changed our lives. So, we're studying the Old Testament, and it's just so amazing to see these people that may have grown up in church or maybe never grown up in church. They just know the 10 Commandments for the most part and a few biblical characters. And then, we're studying this, Genesis 12, 12, 1 through 3, and people, it's like all nations will be blessed. And why that's so relevant for us today, to know that we are a part of Abraham's family through Jesus Christ, and
this thing didn't start with Jesus.
Exactly,
right.
And it's amazing, and just to give people, I think what we have a lot, and I'm going a bit off topic here, but what we have a lot is a lot of half stories. It's like we understand that Jesus died for our sins, but we're not really sure why he had to die for our sins. If that was God's like, oh, my other plans didn't work, so let me send Jesus down there to clean it up, sort of thing. But it's this amazing, fuller understanding of being in God's family, following Jesus and having the Holy Spirit working in just an amazing thing. And so I know that was a bit off topic, but I think it's just the stuff that we've encountered through the campus ministry and through just, reading the Bible. We just want to share that with people. And so.
Gotcha. Well, I think that kind of dovetails with the next question that I think, in many ways we might be treading the same ground here, but what is one thing that your ministry does that's unique? And specifically driving at the idea of if that's something that you do that's kind of unique, either in just your own experience or what college students typically get, how does that impact the way that you worship Jesus? Because I think that's really important, not just to say, hey, we're really weird and off base, and that's just a complete aesthetic choice, and it means nothing about how we interact with the gospel. Well, then that's just kind of a weird thing to say. So how does that unique thing about y'all's ministry actually impact the worship of our Savior?
Yeah, I think I could answer this a couple different ways. One of the ways that I think I'm really excited for, because this question of what makes us so unique, I'm going to give you a little politician, maybe a Michael Scott answer.
Okay.
Our greatest strength is also our greatest weakness.
Right.
So for us, I think that we've been defined, the churches of Christ have been so defined by what makes us unique for so long. We're just like the odd ducks of the Christian world. It's like, oh man, they're pretty cool people, but what's the deal with instruments? They don't like them. They just get really mad when instruments are brought into the room. I'm really excited that we're coming, like I said earlier, back in line and back into our family with our evangelical brothers and sisters. That is something that's really exciting to me, that we see that movement back towards, hey, we all are a part of Abraham's family, a part of God's family, and we're all working towards this common mission. And so for me, that has been extremely exciting to see us standing side by side with other campus ministries, rather than the things that set us apart. If I could answer specifically for us, the Lines for Christ, I do think one of the greatest things that the churches of Christ have had to offer is, it was not for the best reasons always in our history, but we have always placed a high value on the Word of God, knowing the Word of God. And that's something that, I've heard from friends from other, if you want to say tribes or other denominations throughout, me being affiliated with the Churches of Christ. We've always placed a high value on the Word of God. And I think that's really replicated, and you see that in our students at the ministry at Lines for Christ. And so, daily devotions is a very high priority in our ministry. reading the Word of God, slowing down, studying it. I think that greatly impacts how our students worship God, how they interact with faith.
Because it's not about an event. It's not a thing that you go to and have someone talk to you. It's you interacting with the Word, interacting with the Spirit and
Absolutely.
worship. Yeah.
I think, personally speaking, you said this phrase actually, and it's really become a mantra for us. We're trying to create resilient disciples. And I think that with as much thing, people talk about, this generation is soft. I think the greatest disservice that I could do for a college student is not help them and put tools in their tool belt to be self-sustaining. And I don't mean the lone wolf Christian. What I mean is to be able to feed yourself. People commonly use that phrase, but be able to, sit down and study the Bible for yourself, to know how to join a church, get involved with a local church. And then, ultimately one of our goals is we want everyone to be a missionary when they leave. And I don't mean, necessarily going to China or, overseas, but obviously we want them to be able to go to Fayetteville. Say they moved to Fayetteville,
Right.
They start a job at, wherever they start a job at.
It's not a 5-year process for them to figure out what to do next.
Exactly.
Right.
And we want them to, hey, coworker, I have a Bible study on Tuesday nights. Come over to my house, and that for us is the biggest win. And so,
Yeah. And I think that, your notions of with the Church of Christ, y'all have been defined by those denominational distinctives, and denominational distinctives aren't necessarily bad. They're useful to an extent, but I can even say just with one of my main memories that I have with our interactions was the first year that we did Jesus Week. We were going to be doing this on-campus worship service that had all the campus ministries, and we were working together. And I remember after our first big planning session where we were laying out the timeline for that service, after everyone else left, I was like, "Hey, Cade, come here real quick." And I even remember distinctly telling you, like, "Hey, if we need to make sure that we are done with worship, because we're going to have instruments, we're going to be done at this moment, and then you guys could come." Like, that was even how I approached it, was like, I just assumed that was the big hang up of whether or not you were going to be even throwing in with this worship service. And that wasn't a hang up. And I think that really speaks to ecumenically, like how ecumenically minded you are about wanting to see that the glory of Christ is being elevated and not the denominational distinctives. And I think that's to your credit and to your ministry's credit. Whether or not students across the board are even going to recognize that, that's something that I really identified like early on with you. So, I mean, there that is, if nothing else.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. And, I was looking at statistics at our college, the other day, and, man, I think it's just, we're in a fight where, it's a spiritual battle out there for people walking away from the faith, never encountering the gospel. And so it makes no sense to pit ourselves against one another. Obviously, you and I are going to disagree on minor points of theology, what I would call minor points of theology, but we agree on the gospel, and that's what this campus needs. And so I remember that moment as well, man, and it's very refreshing to be on this campus with you and the other campus ministries that all throw in together, and they realize that there's something larger at stake. And not to be trite, but if we're going to squabble about these little things, then it's just not worth it. It's not worth our time, and there's eternal significance. There's eternal consequences to us having these little, musical choice differences.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just trivial. And so,
in many ways, rock on. Well, let's spin the conversation forward about your ministry and talking about what's actually going on now or what's coming down the pipe. Is there something that's actually going on that God's been doing in your ministry over the last 5 years since you've been there that gets you excited, that's been going for quite a while and is now reaching some kind of culmination, or it's something brand new? What gets you excited about doing ministry right now because of what God's doing?
Man, I am so excited. Like, this is the thing. So I've already mentioned it, but I am just stoked about it. So for us, the goal was never to gather a crowd. The goal was never to, have a great, what we call our midweek service on Wednesday nights. It was never to have a big midweek service. Man, the goal for us, I feel like in some ways we will have reached a new level. I don't know if you would say like we're done or finished or anything like that, but it's like this is what we've always been about, what we've always aimed for. and it's to plant a new campus ministry, to reach that period of maturity, what I feel like every disciple needs to reach. You're mature when you're reproducing yourself, sort of thing. That you're a disciple that can make disciples, and I think that to reach maturity as a ministry, that we need to be a ministry that produces ministries. And so, man, we have a couple that's lined up as of next year. They're graduating, and him in particular, he is going to do the apprenticeship program for us. And so for me, that is something that legitimately, it is the most exciting thing about campus ministry, because really, I say apprenticeship program, it's just discipleship. I mean, I basically, we are going to intentionally disciple this guy
with a skill set that maybe not gets covered elsewhere.
Yes, exactly. We're going to put, he's going to be able to lead a campus ministry. Obviously, there'll be an eye towards all the things like planting, church planting, those skill sets. He'll get some practical theological training as well, because, we're a state school, we're a bunch of pagans out here. And so, yeah, man, that has always been the goal in my mind. And I hope that builds upon itself. There's always kind of that barrier you got to break with the first person. Hopefully people will see him and his wife, and as they go through that program, and they will basically say, we could do that too.
We can do it too. Yep.
Exactly. And so, man, I could not be more excited. And, it went from that first year of like, I just hope someone shows up to the Bible study, because I worked really hard on this lesson on Mark. And so to like, someone is going to go into that program, and man, obviously we would be ecstatic if he took over a campus ministry position that was already established. But I think that this couple in particular, they have the skills. God has just gifted them in a way that if they wanted to go and start something new, they could do it. And so
let me ask a clarifying question there. Whenever you say taking over a campus ministry, do you mean a church-based, or like the one that you were involved in Russellville? Is there a distinction in y'all's mind in the way you prepare?
No, I mean, there would be a distinction, but when I speak, I mostly am talking about our current setup like it is now. So we are attached to a church. I think that, obviously you would need a little bit different skill set there. But when I speak of campus ministries, the ones that I'm familiar with in the Churches of Christ are primarily based
church-based.
Yep. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I didn't know if that substantially changed it in any way. Right. I very seriously doubted it, but just didn't know if that was something that was clarifying or useful to clarify. How long is that going to be for this couple?
So it'll be 2 years. And effectively, basically, it works like the year one, they kind of, this is a loose organization. They watch me and they learn things that I do. And then year two, it's like, here you go.
You start doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a little bit loose. Obviously, there's some transition or some
especially if
there.
they're, extraordinarily gifted one way or another in certain things, then it would be foolish of you to just force them to stick into the mold when that's not what they need.
Right.
Hey, that's exciting. Like, I know that's one of the things that, frankly, with BCMs, that's not necessarily our mindset, because we function as an arm of the church.
Yes.
And so we always have an eye towards opportunities to start new ministries in that way, but that's never really been part of the DNA of the BCM. We come out of churches that have that DNA of reproducing and making new ministries, but it's kind of weird that I guess I've never really considered too much about why that isn't the case with BCMs, despite the fact that that's our history, that's our heritage, whereas for y'all, that's part of your heritage and your intentional goal, always. So I think that's, laudable for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So here's the last chance for you to really talk about your ministry. And I know you guys hate doing this, but I'm going to make you do it. Why should a college student come check out LFC? Why is it if they don't believe in Jesus, that they are agnostic or they are atheist or whatever, or if they have a church background, whatever, why should they come check y'all out? Like, what is it that's going to be the thing that's going to be beneficial for them?
I guess I would just say, without a doubt, like, I think it will change your life. And it's not us. It's not, we're not a fraternity or a sorority. But man, I cannot overemphasize what campus ministry has done in my life. And this is not something, it's not a job to me. It's not a paycheck to me. I can't imagine doing my life having not gone through this campus ministry at Tech. And that's something that we are trying to recreate, or really basically put together here on this campus. Our mission statement is we exist to help UAFS students discover that they're designed for something. And obviously that's loaded language, but for me, my person, I don't know if you're out there listening, if you're not a Christian, or if not involved with the campus ministry and you are a Christian, I just didn't have any purpose. And that's a really, I think for me, I just attached to things that I think are important at the time, and I get really good at them, and then I figure out down the road that they're not that important, and then I attach to something new, and that was just my personality. So I think, honestly, man, I think I probably would have started a business. If I could just, what if with Cade Richards' life, either I probably would have started a business, and not to be, braggy here, but it probably would have been a pretty good business. I would probably have been successful in that. And then I would have been 45 years old and been I don't even know if I really want to do this. This is just something I decided when I was 22 years old that I thought would be cool. Mm-hmm. So for me, the campus ministry, because we were studying the Bible, it placed my story in a greater story. It's and this thought always comes up for me. It's man, if I'm really, really impactful and, maybe I leave some trust funds for my grandkids, maybe my great-great-grandkids might know my name.
You're right.
And that thought always strikes me. And it's so what's the point of this? If Cade Richards' name is going to be forgot here in a few generations, what's the point of all this?
Now.
Exactly.
Yeah, right now. Yeah.
So if there's no point, then that really takes the wind out of my sails. And so for me, being introduced to God's story and that God has humanity and all of creation on this trajectory towards restoration, and that we get to play a part in that, I learned all that through the campus ministry. And the way that I can play my part in that right now is introducing people to the way that He is restoring this fallen creation. That might be through full-time ministry. It might be through things like social work or whatever it is for you. It can play out literally in an infinite number of ways. Mm-hmm. But man, that's purpose. And I think that if you come into our group, our ministry, whatever you want to call it, I hope that you will encounter that purpose and that there is a design for you, that God has made you, and He wants you to take part in His story, which is a crazy thing. God can be whoever He wants to be, and He wants you to take part in His redemption plan, right, His restoration plan. That's crazy. So I hope that if you're listening, just give us a shot, man. Just come. I think that you'll encounter friendly people. We're not perfect people, but I want you to hear how God has changed the people's lives. Because there's so many more stories of my own. And the way that we're doing that this year is, really for us, we've been a lot of places. It's not that we've gotten complacent, but we had a large group gathering, and then we also did small groups outside of that. And we didn't say it like this, but it was almost like those, large group was primary, small groups were secondary. Well, this year I'm teaching through YouTube, basically. Mm-hmm. So I put out a video on an Old Testament book each week, myself or Dylan will. And then small groups gather in apartments and dorms across campus. You watch that video and you worship together. You discuss how this applies to your life. Mm-hmm. What does this dude named Abraham have to do with me as I walk into class tomorrow morning? I hope that you will come and you will judge Christianity from the insider's perspective rather than the outsider's. You'll hear this information. You'll meet people, you'll listen to these lessons, and then make your judgment on whether you want to follow Christ or not. And all I can say is, man, it changed my life, and so I just want to share that with people. Yep. That's pretty basic, but that's it.
Well, just as, by way of encouragement, I know for a fact that just even having observed the way LC has grown over the last 5 years with you being there, I know for a fact there have been students that have had their lives changed. I mean, if nothing else, you have this evidence of this couple who's going to be going through y'all's apprenticeship, there it is, right? So, it's not like this is some abstract notion that we're just talking about pie in the sky here. No, we're talking about actual life change from your own perspective, but also other students that I've observed from the outside looking in from y'all's ministry. So, I just want to encourage you there that actually I see that happening.
I appreciate that. And it's God is working on this campus, and we're just excited to be a part of it, so.
Gotcha. All right. So here's the last question for us. This is the one that we end on.
Let's go.
In fact, in the last 2 episodes, there has been insults hurled at country music. For which
Amen.
for which I will not apologize.
That's right. You don't need
to. Exactly. Right. Well, then, hey, we'll get an ISO shot for you saying that
There might
too.
be some insights.
I want to know what's on your playlist right now. I don't know if you're a Spotify guy. I talked to Blake in the last episode. You can check it out there. He's an Apple Music guy. Didn't know they actually existed.
It's like
He's
Kmart brand or something.
I don't know what the deal is there.
You listening on a Zune as well?
Right. With the big headphones that actually go with the band around the back of your neck. Those are cool. What's on your playlist, man? What are you listening to? Song, genre, artist, band, whatever. What's filling your ear hole right now?
So, man, let me just preface this a little bit, okay? All right, everyone, just relax.
Just say it. Just say it. Look right here, and just say
talking to you. So, so I had a girlfriend in high school that would just really play them musicals all the time, and I hated it. Just absolutely hated it.
What kind of musicals?
I mean,
like West Side Story and
that was like High School Musical times. That was like Sweeney Todd, Hairspray, all those. Okay, that was like, 2008 or 9? Anyways, doesn't matter. She played a lot of them, and I wasn't stoked on them at all. And so, like, that pretty much, and my family, I got two brothers, it's me and them. And so, like, we didn't watch any of the Disney movies. I mean, we were watching, like, Major Payne and, like, Dumb and Dumber and stuff. And so, like,
classics.
Yeah, exactly. I grew up right. And so, anyways, man, like, every time I'd hear, like, any Disney song or musicals, I'm like, why are they singing? I mean, that's pretty common for, good old boys like me. It's like, why are they singing? Just, say it. And so anyways, that's all the preface. So, the other day,
some show tunes come on and oh man.
Well, strange. I don't have any kids, but I heard this song from Frozen 2 by Panic at the Disco. I think it's called Into the Unknown.
Yeah, it is. Of course it is.
Dude,
man.
I've been jamming that bad boy. So, like, going into the gym, going to do some heavy back squats, Into the Unknown. You know what I'm saying? So, I've been hitting that, like, way more than I would like to admit. Like, I'll just listen to it on loop, like, getting fired up. Like, yeah, so do this workout.
Lost in the Woods is a power ballad off of Frozen 2.
Ballad.
It is one of those power ballads that's meant to make fun of power ballads, but it's absolutely on the Frozen 2 soundtrack.
Let's go, baby.
Not that I listen to it or know anything about it, obviously.
He's got a friend. Man, that's a ballad of power. Yeah, I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. What about podcasts? Are you a podcaster? Do you listen to a bunch of sermons? Like, what do you fill the rest of your time with?
Man, Dylan, he's always listening to good stuff. So he got me hooked on this one called Revenant Radio. Have you heard of that?
Yep.
It's good stuff, man. It's like they have like a variety of different people. It's, similar almost to this conversation we're having today, like across the aisle sort of thing, Christianity and different things. And I've been listening to a lot of that recently. We talked about this earlier. Honestly, I do listen to some Joe Rogan because like everybody else listens to Joe Rogan. So for me,
I don't. I absolutely.
You throw it out there. You don't do it.
I don't listen to Joe Rogan.
I do, but it's
and who's this guy again? Who's this Joe Rogan you're speaking of?
You ever seen Fear Factor?
Fear Factor guy, yeah. News radio.
Exactly.
News radio.
But yeah, man, I think it's like not to just like throw this under there and like excuse myself for listening to it, but I think for me, man, it's like it's a really good talking point for a lot of people. It's like he covers a variety of topics. Everybody listens to him, so
he's absolutely part of the cultural zeitgeist. So if nothing else, the ideas that people are discussing.
Yep.
I mean, like even like the political issues. I remember watching one where he had Andrew Yang on talking about the basic monthly income, the stipend that would be proposed by Andrew Yang whenever he was running for the Democratic primary, and they talked about that. And like the guy's an MMA fan, like Andrew Yang is, as well as Joe Rogan, obviously. But so that was like my entry point into the JRE. But at the same time, like the reason there's value there is not because I agree with anything they would say, but because I need to be aware at some level that's the arguments that are being made.
That is literally why I started listening to it, just so that I can, what are people talking about? What are people interested in? What are people arguing about? And, Facebook's just a dumpster fire, and I think that, that is a good way to listen to what people are interested in talking about.
It's a little more curated than, your timeline.
Absolutely. Curated is a great word.
Yeah, rock on. All right, so anything else that you want to share that's embarrassing that you've been listening to recently?
Man, no, I mean, I'm just like... I know you're a big country music fan, so I've just been.
I'll show you a clip after this.
Okay.
And you can look at the previous 2 episodes that we've had where both Clayton and Blake
An abomination unto the Lord.
It's something that just needs to be rid of.
Man, I will say this too. I like Chris Stapleton though, and I think we talked about this. He is country a little bit, and so
Don't make me lose respect.
Okay,
for
I'm
you.
just let me just slide this in before you lose respect, man. And like I really was stoked because he just released a new CD, and it's it's more like Southern rock. Anyways, you need to listen to.
I'll say okay. Well, let me
go
extend
ahead,
an
go
olive branch
ahead.
here. I will admit that for somebody who enjoys storytelling and enjoys like real life expressions of artistic acumen, right? So that they are putting real life situations to music, to tunes, whatever. Like you would think that I would enjoy country music.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because country music sucks so bad, I can't get over it. Regardless of whatever great qualities there may be that might be redemptive, I can't get beyond that. So
right.
I'm going to wrap up that olive branch with an insult.
Well, let me say this too. So I don't know if you're a Parks and Rec fan,
Oh, yeah.
but okay. So do you remember the scene when they're putting on? I can't remember a big event, but I think Andy and Leslie go, and they're trying to book this like big country singer or whatever.
And they get Lil Sebastian.
Yeah, yes. But do you remember when they're booking the singer? Like they walk in, he's like playing a song, and it like perfectly captures all country, or I would say 99% of country.
You're
It's
right.
like, you bring the beer, I'll bring the girls, and the troops will bring the freedom.
Yeah.
Like that's it, man. Like that's like 99% of country songs. So.
And therefore, it is not
It's
useful.
trash.
We shouldn't have it.
Exactly.
Shouldn't have it. Rock on. Well, hey, as we wrap up right here, I want to give one last shot. How can people get a hold of you all? Website, Instagram, that kind of jazz. What's the easiest
Yeah.
way to get a hold of them?
Yeah,
Look at that camera right there.
We're getting into the times. I think the easiest way for you to get in contact with our ministry is to DM. That's direct message for you older people. Slide into our DMs at lionsforchrist_UAFS. That's primarily where we do most of our outreach. Most of the information that you need to know is posted on that page. And so, follow us on Instagram and message us there. So.
And then you got your YouTube page. All that stuff's posted
Lions
there.
for Christ on YouTube. And it's really cool. Coronavirus has made us adapt and things like that, but it's a lot of ways it's for the better.
Mm-hmm.
And we've put out those videos, and so you can go to Lions for Christ. That's our YouTube page. And let's say this summer you want to just kind of take a little course through the Old Testament. I think there's some.
It will be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm pretty excited about that. And so, those are the 2 primary places where you
Rock
can
on. Well, hey, all that stuff's going to be linked down in the description below the video if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're listening on Spotify, it's going to be in the show notes. They'll have all this information in there. Any other parting shots you want to give to everybody before we bounce?
Yeah, I beat Lee in a hobby horse race a couple
Oh,
of
he
years
did.
ago.
He did.
Just need that to be known.
There is a
need to
great
see that.
picture that's hanging on the wall out here at the BCM from whenever
Really?
where students were doing hobby horse races, stick horse races, if you're not in the know.
don't know.
Grown adults running around acting like they're riding stick horses.
All for the glory of Jesus.
That is campus ministry.
That's
right there.
right, baby.
Rock on. Well, hey man, I'm glad you've been here. I appreciate the time you spent, and hopefully this has been beneficial for your students getting to hear just even maybe a little bit more from you, students who don't know about LFC. Hopefully this will be one of those things that'll be instrumental in them recognizing their need for community.
Absolutely, man.
Rock on.
Thanks, Lee.
Hey man, well we're going to end here, and we're going to end with our benediction of sorts that we always end with, and it's by saying this: do good, don't sin.